Welcome to Coffee and Wisdom. I'm David Breeden, the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation. And this is a humanist perspective on theological questions. And right now, what we are looking at, by golly, is the idea of syncretism. The idea of syncretism, of how we go about creating, I guess, new ideas. That would be one way to think about that. How do human theological systems evolve over time? So I'm calling it right now syncretism and strange brews. Wikipedia tells us that syncretism is the combining of different beliefs in various schools of thought. Syncretism involves the merging or assimilation of several originally discrete traditions, especially in the theology and mythology of religion. And last week, I talked, for example, about the Silk Road and how this huge network for trading really changed a lot of philosophy and religion, let alone all kinds of other human ideas. Syncretism, well, I also talked about the face of Jesus. We can have the hipster Jesus. We can have a Chinese Jesus. We can have a Hindu Jesus. There are all kinds out there, all about syncretism. We have one idea, this Palestinian philosopher guy, and then we have these other ideas about Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and on in terms of how they get mixed together. D.H. Lawrence, the British novelist, said, "Eat and carouse with Bacchus or munch dry bread with Jesus, but don't sit down without one of the gods." And that's about as synchronous as it gets, with D.H. Lawrence saying, I don't care what kind of God you sit down with, just sit down with one of them. And yes, he is seeing the pantheon of the gods as being something that can be easily chosen off the shelf. Well, today I want to look at the case of Wee Woo Wee. Wee Woo Wee is a writer, as we shall see. Now, what does wee woo wee mean? Well, it actually means action without action. It is a Chinese term. It comes from the Tao Te Ching, the ancient writings in Taoism, purported to be by Lao Tzu. And the Tao Te Ching says this: the way, which is the English translation of the word Tao, the way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. The way of the universe never acts, yet nothing is left undone. Okay, and that is woo wee. But let's look at some of the sayings of the philosopher who called himself Wee Woo Wee. For example, he said this: play your part in the comedy, but don't identify yourself with your role. As he sees it, this is a distillation of Asian thought down to the idea of non identification with the self. Another quote: as long as there is a you doing or not doing, thinking or not thinking, meditating or not meditating, you are no closer to home than the day you were born. Again, this non dual thinking that we is distilling from Asian thought, very specifically Taoism, but also very much mixed in with that is the a lot of Buddhist thinking as well. Particularly Mayan Buddhism, which is the larger of the vehicles, as is said. Another one: why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. This is his most famous quote. It is very interesting. It's very Taoist, yes, and also Buddhist, to kind of, yeah, definitely synchronize there together a little bit. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. There, very simple summation of a great deal of Asian philosophy. Some more. Disciples and devotees, what are most of them doing? Worshiping the teapot instead of drinking the tea. So, using those metaphors out of Asian cultures and using them to talk about the philosophy, the religious ideas of Taoism and Buddhism, kind of stirred up together there. Another saying, living should be perpetual and universal benediction. Well, now, this is one of those ideas that certainly comes out in many, many different religious and philosophical traditions that, philosophically speaking, living in the now and living with the gratitude of saying, wow, this is really wonderful. Thanks a lot, universe, as the best way to go through life. Another saying, it is not for us to search, but to remain still, to achieve immobility, not action. And that is the philosopher Wee Woo Wee talking about Wee Woo, the philosophy of non action, by settling in and seeing what has to be done, what doesn't have to be done, and settling into the center of our own being. When these books were coming out from the 1950s into the 1980s, they were anonymous. Wee Woo Wee, who is this guy? Here's an original first edition, Ask the Awakened the Negative Way. There were lots of books still available by Wee Woo Wee. They have been perpetually in print since the time they came out. Each is both The Journal of a Pilgrim on the Way by Wee Woo Way and Fingers Pointing Towards the Moon, Wee Woo Way, using again a very famous metaphor that the moon is not the finger pointing to the moon, and the finger pointing is not the moon. Well, guess what? This great philosopher was actually Terence Gray, a British entrepreneur born in 1895, died in 1986. And so that has led to quite a bit of discussion. How much did this Terence Gray Brit understand about Asian cultures and philosophies? Is this just a mishmash of an Englishman's understanding of Buddhism and Taoism, probably mixed in with too much Anglicanism, would be one critique. Or is he onto something? Very good question. And critics still are discussing that particular question. Again, it's syncretism, apparently. And so it makes sense to the people who are in similar social locations with Terence Gray. He wrote this as Wee Woo Way. It is only with total humility and an absolute stillness of mind that we can know what indeed we are. And that is the central message of the philosophy of Wee Woo Way. One of his books is called The Open Secret, and this is from the introduction to the book. The writer of these lines has nothing whatsoever to teach anyone. His words are just his contribution to our common discussion of what must inevitably be for us the most important subject which could be discussed by sentient beings. And yes, that is how to be itself. But this humility that we see in the writings of Wee Wu Wei, it is very interesting in that way. He's always saying very carefully, it's not about me. And indeed, there are critical looks at his philosophy. Roy Melvin, The Non-Dual Philosophy of Wee Wu Wee. And there you have it. A philosopher who put together, synchronized all sorts of different ideas to come up with a fairly cogent philosophy. I want to take one more look at one other thing before we leave today, and that is Hakuman, the god of eight banners. Hakuman is the Shinto god, a Shinto god, and protector of warriors, very popular among the samurai of Japan. And so he is the protector of the samurai. But all kinds of different professions have over time taken Hakamon on as a guardian spirit. There are, by some estimates, 25,000 Hakamon shrines, Shinto shrines in Japan. That's a lot. And the interesting thing about Hakamon is that he is a god, a protecting spirit, really, not a god as we understand it in the monotheistic world. But Hakamon comes to Japan from the entrance of Buddhism into it. And when we look at the older representations of Hakamon, it is very clear what he is really. Yep, there he is sitting on a lotus. That is the Buddha, or one of the Buddhas. Well, on Thursday, I want to look at some more strange brews, some more ideas of how human beings take these very different ideas and put them together to come up with new religious and philosophical thinking. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll be back on Thursday. And as always, if you have questions or comments, don't hesitate to email me, minister@firstunitarian.org. And thanks so much for joining in, and I'll see you on Thursday.